300-mile race for the Xfinity drivers. That is a level just below Monster Energy Cup. They start their season here that Saturday afternoon. On February 26th, we had the 59th running of the Daytona 500, and that was won this year by Kurt Busch, number 41 Ford. In March, motorcycles come to Daytona for Bike Week. Here at the track, we have two major events, our Supercross and also the Daytona 200 road race here. That's a famous and legendary motorcycle race we've been holding in this area since 1937. Just last weekend, we did have the Monster Energy Cup drivers back here for the running of the Coke Zero 400. This year that was won by Rick Stenhouse Jr. Also, some people refer to him as Danica's boyfriend. Coming up in October, the motorcycles will be back for the running of the Fall Cycle Scene Championship Series. And then finally, the last weekend of December, go-karts come to Daytona. The World Karting Association is here. So those are our major ticket events throughout the year. We are using the track almost 250 days a year for one thing or another. But today isn't one. We're going to get a chance to be right on the track. Speaking of the track, as good a time as any for some welcoming remarks from a gentleman I mentioned earlier. I think you'll recognize his voice when you hear it.
Hi, this is three-time Daytona 500 champion Jeff Gordon. I'm pleased to welcome all of you to Daytona International Speedway, the world's first motorsports stadium. Nearly 60 years ago, a small-town auto mechanic named Bill France Sr. dreamed of creating a racetrack that was bigger, faster, and more exciting than any before it. In the ensuing decades, his belief, big dreams, transformed Daytona International Speedway into the world's center of racing. Synonymous with names like Petty, Earnhardt, and Allison, Daytona International Speedway has captured the imaginations of the millions who have set foot on these hallowed grounds. Now, Bill France's dream has taken yet another step forward with the reimagination of this American icon, blending the modern amenities that today's sports fans demand with the heritage that race fans expect from Daytona. As 2016 saw the closest finish in the history of the Great American Race, it not only conjured memories of Johnny Beauchamp and Lee Petty's three-wide photo finish in the inaugural 1959 Daytona 500, but reminded race fans everywhere that a reimagined race experience hadn't changed the core of what Bill France envisioned decades ago. Welcome to the World Center of Racing.
Right, original construction started here at Daytona back in November of 1957. They finished it up 14 months later, just in time for the running of the very first Daytona 500. That was held here on February 22nd, 1959. That year they raced in front of about 41,000 eager race fans. Total property here for the Daytona International Speedway Corporation is about 480 acres. 180 of those acres are what you're going to see shortly once we get inside the walls here, and that, of course, is the track in the infield here. The distance around the outside of our track here at Daytona is 2.5 miles, and we also have an additional 1.1 infield road course that gets used during the Rolex 24 and also during the Daytona 200 motorcycle race. So when those guys make a full lap, they actually cover 3.6 miles one time around. Racing in the Daytona Beach area has a long history. It goes all the way back to 1903. A couple gentlemen made a friendly wager as who had the fastest horseless carriage back then. They raced down on the beach on what's known as the measured mile. That's somewhere between Ormond Beach and Daytona Beach. Between 1903 and 1935, 7 land speed records were set here on our beaches. The last one in 1935 was set by a gentleman by the name of Sir Malcolm Campbell in a famous car he called the Bluebird. That day he averaged 276 miles per hour on the beach. Now, I say average because with the wind behind him, he actually went 303 miles per hour. It's pretty impressive for 1935. I bring that up now because at the end of our tour, you'll be able to go into our nice air-conditioned museum for the Motorsports Hall of Fame. And on display in there will be the famous Bluebird, so you'll be able to check that out and read a little bit more about that historic day here. Well, in 1935, though, they discovered if they went out west to the Utah salt flats, they didn't have to deal with an ocean tide coming in to cover up the course. So all that land speed effort went west. But meanwhile, we started having stock car racing on our beaches here as early as 1936. The first 2 years, it was sanctioned and sponsored by the city of Daytona Beach, but when they couldn't make a profit at it, They turned it over to a young entrepreneur by the name of Bill France. In 1938, he made a whopping $200 profit promoting races here on our beaches. And I guess you'd have to say he's done pretty well ever since. Now back then, those races were 4 miles on the beach. There was 2 miles on A1A and 2 miles on the beach. There were 160 miles in length. But if somebody got stuck in the sand or caution laps ran too long, sometimes the ocean tide would come in and they wouldn't be able to finish that race because they'd lose half their track. So that inspired Big Bill to start looking for property where he could build a super speedway of his dreams. He was hoping to have a full 2.5 mile perfect oval with high banks at both ends. He got just about everything he was looking for on this property that we're now looking at right inside these walls. Now his plan again was to have that perfect oval. The only problem with that plan, when he found this property, is what he liked about this property is it had the right kind of dirt. He was looking for dirt that had a nice sticky substance. They call it marl, the kind of dirt he found out here. And he used that dirt he dug out the center portion of this property, created a great new lake out there called Lake Lloyd. You're going to see that in a minute. He dug out 1 million cubic yards of dirt right in the center here. And that is the dirt he used to build his high banks at both ends. The only problem with that plan is he couldn't quite get the full oval that he wanted. That was due to the fact that there are 2 businesses at the time that were bordering both sides of this property. One is our airport, and you're seeing that off in the distance over there beyond the backstretch. That was already here. On the opposite corner of this property, there was a dog track located out there. So in order to fit that full 2.5 miles between those 2 businesses, he had to get creative with his shape. He pushed out the north side of the oval and created a fresh, brand new shape, which is famously now known as the tri-oval. And by that I mean if you saw this track from the air, looking down on it, instead of looking like a perfect oval, we look more like a capital D, which kind of worked out in our favor since we are Daytona. All right, and we swing out over here to the right. We're going to go out onto the backstretch. You are getting a really great view now of Lake Lloyd. Lake Lloyd was named after his good friend Saxton Lloyd, Bill France's friend. Bill Saxton was his first employer here when Bill France moved to Daytona back in the late 30s. They remained lifelong friends. You're looking at the end of turn number 2 as we come out onto the backstretch. The full super stretch here extends from the end of turn 2 down to the beginning of turn number 3. Full length of it is about 3,400 feet. The end of it is banked at 3 degrees. That helps the water runoff when we do have rain here. You can see it's fully paved back here. This is a full skid pad. It does help the drivers get control a little bit better should they get off the track, off the backstretch. Now the backstretch runs parallel to the runways of our airport. Back in 1984 was a famous moment when Ronald Reagan was arriving for the race in Air Force One. The race was already underway. As Air Force One was landing on the backstretch, at that very moment, Richard Petty was a lone driver here, and a photographer captured that moment. So it made a fun little framing where it looked like Richard Petty was racing Air Force One right down the backstretch once that picture was taken. One other thing to see as we get down through here, eventually you're going to see a blue line on the pavement and also on the white wall to our right. That is the overtime line on the backstretch. Now the rules of racing here is if the race goes into overtime, it's the last 2 laps of the race. Once the lead car on the white lap race, the last lap, once the lead car has passed this blue line, it doesn't matter if there's any more cautions, if there are any more crashes or anything. The race is official. So should there be a crash after that car passes there, it wouldn't matter. The race would be frozen, and the leader at that moment would be the winner of the race. I'm going to take a little dip into the pavement here. You're going to see this is the chicane of the backstretch. The chicane is used during the Rolex 24 and also the Daytona 200 motorcycle race. When those vehicles come up the backstretch during the race, they dip down into this portion of the track before they enter up into turns 3 and 4. The Nascar drivers do not use the chicane. They stay totally on the outside all the way around during those races. So that would be for the Monster Energy Cup race and also the Xfinity race. I say they stay totally on the outside, but that's a little tongue-in-cheek. If you look at these tire marks here, you see not everybody quite stayed on the outside. Last couple races we've had here, we've had quite a bit of activity up in this corner. Now, as we approach turns 3 and 4, I can tell you they are identical to turns 1 and 2 at the other end. They are 2,600 feet in length from beginning to end and banked at 31 degrees at their steepest point. Just outside of turn 3, you'll see a Sunoco sign up there on a pole. There's another Sunoco sign on the outside. Sandwiched in between them up there, you'll notice there are 2 chairs. That's the NASCAR official spotter stand. So 2 NASCAR officials. Keep an eye out for any debris or any other problems in this area of the track. The next platform you're looking up there is for TV cameras, so they get a nice bird's eye view of the backstretch from up there. The distance from those double yellow lines you see at the bottom of the apron up into the inside layer of the wall is about 42 feet, or about 4 stories high. Can't quite make it out right now. There is a broken white line that runs along that upper portion. It's about 30 feet up to that area up through there. We are driving in the direction that the cars race here. During the race, cars could be coming through these turns 3 wide, side by side, nose to tail, sometimes over 200 miles an hour. And in fact, sometimes they will try to get through here 4 wide, and sometimes they make it. Sometimes they don't. Now, if a car gets loose here, gets loose and gets into that wall, the good news is we have something here called the safer barrier. Some other folks call that soft wall. SAFER stands for Steel and Foam Energy Reduction. By that I mean that inside layer of the wall is 9 miles of steel flex tubing. Inside that you'll see our pyramid-shaped styrofoam pads. The outer layer of the wall is concrete. So if a car gets loose and gets into the wall, the steel flex tubing and styrofoam pads are designed to give way, and that significantly reduces the impact of a collision here. At this point, we're about halfway between turns 3 and 4. We get a really good view now of the new Motorsports Stadium. This is the finished product of a project we began in July of 2013, and we finished it up last January of 2016. We dubbed it Daytona Rising, and it was all about converting the old original grandstands into this new state-of-the-art Motorsports Stadium. That front stretch now has a seating capacity for 101,500 seats. The colorful pattern you're looking at up there is called a confetti pattern, and there is some thought behind it. So if TV cameras pan to stands at any time, it always looks like it's full of people at all times up there. Not a problem for our last 2 Daytona 500s, because we did sell out each and every one of those seats. Now the black and white seats you're looking at in that midsection is directly over the tri-oval. We like to think of those as our best seats in the house. If you had seats there, they're normally sold as a 4-day package during speed weeks, and you'd have your same seat Thursday through Sunday while you were here. The individual seats, races would be sold in all those other seats. And the value of a ticket here is based on the view. The higher you sit, the more expensive your seat's likely to be. By that I meant during the Daytona 500, the bottom row was about a $95 ticket, and the top row was about a $250 ticket. So it ranges as you made your way up through there. As we come off turn 4, now you're getting a view of the infield garages here at the east end. These are for the Monster Energy Cup drivers. You see they are set up with a Goodyear tire garage and also a Sunoco fueling station. There are 74 garages available at this end of the infield for the Monster Energy drivers. Those under that canopy, there are 30 overflow garages there. The main 44 garages are in the cinder block section a little farther down. You'll see there are steps that lead up above those garages, and they are accessible for fans in our fan zone, so you can go right up above the garages and watch some of the race from that point of view while the race is underway. I'll tell you a little bit more about the fan zone once we get into the infield a little bit later. Right now we're heading towards the tri-oval for our first stop on this tour, and we're going to stop at the start-finish line right up there. As we make our way there, if you look off to my side, the driver's side, as we approach it, on the pavement there's a yellow line. That is the entry to pit road. As drivers cross that commitment line, they call that, they must reduce their speed to 55 miles per hour as they approach their pits on pit road, or they would be penalized. Meanwhile, on the other side of the track, you're seeing on the white wall 2 red lines on the wall, right wall there. A little farther down here, there's a single red line. This is the restart zone. So when the race begins or restarts after a caution, this is where the drivers will leave the field and start hitting the gas pedal as they approach the start-finish line to take the green flag right in the middle of the tri-oval. This tri-oval section here is banked at 18 degrees. So actually there are no flat areas anywhere around the tracks. 3 degrees on the backstretch, 31 degrees in the high banks, and 18 degrees through this tri-oval. I'm going to be pulling up here and coming to a stop at the start-finish line and let you all get out. I appreciate it if you'd all just exit on the track side. Do not get out onto the grass. While we're here, and we'll spend a few minutes while you all can take pictures and enjoy some of this embankment and get a feel for it. This 18 degrees can be deceiving, so please no running. Walk carefully. And we'll stop here and let you enjoy a few minutes here at the start-finish line here at Daytona International Speedway.